Welcome back. In this episode of Mind Warp, I'm joined by Emilie Ditton, who sits right at the intersection of mining, energy, and digital transformation. Emilie is Mining, Mineral and Metals and Energy and Chemicals Segment Director for Australia New Zealand at Schneider Electric. We decided to split our recording into two parts, so I hope you'll stick around and join us for both sections of this two-part episode. We'll spend the first part of the conversation unpacking why sustainability and, of course, decarbonisation in mining are far more complex than they're often presented. If you've ever wondered why energy transition initiatives stall or really scale slowly or even fail to deliver the value that was promised, this conversation sets the context you need before jumping to solutions. So with that said, let's get to our first part of the Mind War podcast with Schneider Electric's Emilie Ditton. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back to the Mind War podcast with your host, MP Strydom, that's me. And this is the podcast, of course, where we talk about all things new and innovative and interesting happening in the natural resources industry. We focus on mining and digitization, electrification, automation, or any other related topics that are really interesting for miners and for mining technologists. So on that topic, we speak to inventors or innovators, innovative companies, and we also speak with the mining industry experts. And then we speak with even with investors and igniters that take these technologies to the market and make sure that they live and survive and remain sustainable. And speaking of sustainability, that's kind of close to the topic this morning. I really tried to find interesting guests, and our guest this morning, I had the privilege to meet a few years ago at a joint work group that we've had for a year or three running, and she is Emilie Ditton. Now, Emilie is a chemical engineer with a finance and marketing background as well. So she's one of those people that likes learning. And I'm sure our conversation is going to be mostly around electrification, decarbonisation, sustainability, and so on, is going to be very interesting. So welcome to the Mind War podcast, Emilie.
Thanks, MP. It's so lovely to be here with you this morning.
Yes. So you are with Schneider Electric, of late, I should say, and still in that role of looking after innovation and looking after minerals and metals as an industry. So why don't you tell us a little bit more maybe about your current role, but also about your background, if you don't mind, just to give us an idea, and for those that don't know you, who they are talking to.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think that question's really interesting because I have meandered a little bit. I think we connected first when I was a technology analyst for technology analyst for IDC. And that role was about engaging with suppliers to mining companies across IT and OT and supporting mining companies in their digital transformation roadmaps. So I got both sides of the divide, so to speak. Now I am with Schneider Electric, as you say, and I lead the what we call MMM, so mining, minerals and metals, and what we call energy and chemicals. So that's really oil and gas and hydrogen, sales team and segments. So that role is all about working in a team where we take all the amazing things that Schneider does across electrification and digital control systems and takes those things into mining companies and really being able to bring those things in a way that's contextual to the challenges that mining companies face in their decarbonisation and their electrification and their digital transformations.
And it's interesting how it's so easy to use digitization and electrification in the same sentence, isn't it? Those two topics are really converging, and more they are just different flavors of the same topic. aren't they?
Yeah, they are in a way. And I guess in terms of my background, I have a really heavy digital advisory background. So as I
Mm,
said, I worked with mining companies on their digital transformations, always OT centric, always
mm,
data centric. Um, and I joined Schneider Electric with not the kind of heavy electrification or even process control background that many in the
mm,
business have.
mm,
But what I have found is that the sustainable transformation that we're on to drive decarbonisation really requires not just the electrification, but also a level of digital maturity and automation sophistication that companies have been building over the last 10 years in the mining sector. And it
mm,
really is bringing, I guess, another objective and focus to the digital transformations that were kind of in flow and in process anyway. Um,
mm. And it seems to me like, and I am somewhat of an outsider to the whole electrification story, but from where I sit and I speak to many people about that, it seems like there's um, more of an engineering solution, or I should no rephrase, a business solution approach to that, and not only an engineering solution approach these days, because
mm,
the considerations are not only how do I get energy to my equipment and my people underground or in the mine, but much more about what is the mix, and you just talked about this, the whole system approach. How do I create energy either as a differentiator from a decarbonization perspective or as a cost differentiator from a sustainable
mhm,
provision. And so it's become a very interesting business area, the whole
mm.
electrification idea. It's not only about, wiring anymore.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that's really interesting about it, that
Mm,
fundamentally what's changing as you move from a diesel heavy mine operations environment to a renewable solar, wind, or even other alternative fuel environment is
mm,
that energy, because those intermittent sources are not uh, can, mean that energy is not an unlimited resource in the context
yeah,
of mine design anymore. And
yeah.
so it means that it is a constraining input to the
Mm,
process.
mm,
And then that really does fundamentally challenge not just the business model, but really more immediately the operating model.
mm,
And what we find in our customers, even before you get to the really challenging things about how you manage production outcomes in the context of variable energy supply,
mm,
and what that looks like. And that's really where a lot of those really mature digital capabilities are required. But even
mm,
before you get to that, most mining companies may have like energy management people who are looking after the energy demands at site, and then the corporate level sustainability outcomes. And then there
mm,
are process people who are looking after production and process optimization,
mm,
and largely not on an integrated basis. And so what we find is that it it requires at an operating model level really to bring together all of the stakeholders, and again really
right.
driving that digital interoperability and really
Mm,
challenging companies to have that data model in place that we've been talking about for many years.
mm,
And then ultimately there is also a business model shift as well that
mm,
is, I
mm.
think, the end state of where the decarbonisation transformation goes.
So just talk to me a little bit about Schneider Electric itself and your team maybe, and how do you help mining companies with this problem domain?
Yeah, so as I kind of mentioned briefly at the beginning of our chat, Schneider Electric really brings together digital capabilities. So in that we mean software from um, from connected things all the way through to edge control, SCADA,
Mm,
Pi capabilities, and then the decision-making layer over the top of that. So
right.
digital, and but then also digitized control. electrification.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that electrification expertise and connected devices, and we really bring together that digital capability and that electric capability so that we can support our clients in their decarbonisation transformation to sustainable operations. And we really see our role as being enabling our customers, their businesses, and the world that we live in to be more enabled and efficient. And I guess there's several elements of efficiency there, right? There's the energy efficiency that we drive. So in bringing together the electric capabilities and the digital is really about enabling digital to drive energy efficiency through things like digital twin and asset management, operational optimization. Then process efficiency, so really being able to drive the automation within those processes, removing bottlenecks within processes, enabling throughput. And then carbon efficiency, of course, so supporting customers in their move from diesel operations to electrified operations and really being able to reduce their carbon footprint. And then last of all, resource innovation, so supporting in building the green energy ecosystem for our customers in terms of microgrids and battery storage and electric vehicles. So really playing into all of the parts, all of the elements of the efficiency and decarbonisation transformation that companies are on, which is obviously an enormously complex new context for most mining companies.
And is it, do you find yourself mostly consulting for the purpose of doing technology implementation, or do you do consulting for the sake of advisory solutions only, or is it a combination?
So we have consulting capabilities in sustainability consulting. That's really about the ability to make those PPA and energy invoicing choices to drive efficiency in that space. We have a capability around process electrification, so really being able to bring power and process together and impact the efficiency from a process perspective in those power decisions. And then in terms of digital consulting, so, really helping clients to frame the questions and then enable the efficiency and digital capability across connected devices, SCADA, and really data enablement in terms of having that right level of contextual decision making across operations.
Now, you've chosen a very interesting industry, mining, I guess. It's not exclusively mining, I guess, but certainly that's a big part of the world that you live in and that you play in.
It is.
What drew you to mining?
Interesting question, because I kind of meandered my way a little bit.
Okay.
As you said, I'm a chemical engineer and always in heavy infrastructure problems. My career started at AGL, who is an Australian utilities organisation, which was at the time owned the pipeline assets, the gas pipeline assets across Australia. So I was involved in the sort of the optimisation and the deprivatisation of that industry at that time, and then meandered through that a little bit. Ended up in an advisory firm and found myself providing technology decision advice to mining companies, and found that I just loved it. And I think what drew me to it was the complexity. Mining has some of the most interesting engineering problem statements where you have, enormous capital project complexity, enormous amounts of moving parts.
Yeah. I remember when we had a previous discussion a while ago, we talked about wicked problems that still remain in the mining industry. And I think that is true. I've worked in aviation, and I've worked in some other industries, fintech and so on, where problems seem to be around efficiencies and planning and so on. Um, but mining also has problems of its own, and
Mm-mm.
there's this unique challenge. It's between um, decarbonisation as where mining is a global source of carbon, I guess, carbon emissions. But at the same time, mining is also the major supplier of the critical minerals that are going to be needed to make this
Mhm.
sustainable energy transition. I mean, and so what do you do? Where do you focus? You've got to start
Mhm.
somewhere, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think, in thinking about, when I was thinking about this, I'm thinking, like, what at the core really is that wicked problem that we're solving for here?
Mm,
And I think that at the core, it's really the ability to consistently manage mining operations to maximize profitability regardless of the stage of the commodity cycle you're in. And a
mm,
lot of money, we've progressed enormously in the last 10 years from a digital perspective, and now in the last
mm,
few years from a sustainability perspective in this sector, no question.
mm,
But
mm,
really, I don't think we can point to like a single company that's really got that profitability consistency. And then when you layer at the top of it the sustainability and decarbonisation challenge, that then adds another layer of complexity and another
mm,
challenge to the business model and the operating model that we've been talking about. So I think to me that to me is like the great wicked problem of digital and decarb transformation for mining companies, is being able to do that consistently regardless of where in the commodity price cycle you are.
mm.
um, and that's hard.
The So that was it for the first part of our episode with Schneider Electric's Emilie Ditton. In the next part of the conversation, we move from why this problem is so hard to how leading organizations are actually tackling it, from digital maturity and operating models to the realities of execution inside complex mining environments. I look forward to seeing you next time.